Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast with the Property Management Aid Station. I have Mark Brower on this very special episode. Mark, welcome. How are you?
I'm excited to be here. This is a special episode.
Yeah, so we're going to dig into what makes it so special, but we have a couple of announcements. I think we should just jump right in.
Let's do it.
So as you may know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, this Property Management Success Podcast is put on by ONYX Property Management Coaching, and we've been doing coaching in the industry since about 2017, and Mark has been a part of our podcast for a while. Mark is actually joining ONYX as one of our very valuable team members. So he's going to be joining ONYX Property Management Coaching as a coach, as a presenter, and as somebody that's just helping us get the word out. So Mark, welcome. How do you feel about that?
I'm feeling super excited.
Let's try that again. How are you feeling about that?
I've been secretly plotting this for over a year. Finally, I convinced Tony to let me in. I am so excited.
Yeah, there we go. Well, we're excited to have you a part of the team. We've been working very well together. We've been working on some things behind the scenes. And so we'll dig into that a little bit as we go. But the other reason we want to celebrate is this is our 100th episode. And if you've done any research in the podcast arena at all, making it to 100 episodes is pretty rare. Most podcasts have a problem making it. People will record one or two episodes and they have good intention but bad follow through. And even getting to 50 episodes is quite a feat. So for us to be able to double that, I think has been excellent. And for you to be a part of that journey for a good part of those episodes, I want to say congratulations to you as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. It's funny because back when I used to coach basketball, back years ago, I coached 36 seasons of basketball. We coached year round, so it was 3 seasons a year. But I used to tell the kids, every time we would learn a new skill, the first 100 is practice, because they would get so caught up with doing the first one right. You're going to line up at the free throw line and you're going to shoot your free throw and you are going to miss it. And if you don't have the mentality that we're doing the reps to get better, you're going to focus on the fact that you've missed 3 in a row. And so at that time, I'm coaching little kids, and I just came up with this philosophy that the first 100 times you do anything is all practice. So I'm really proud of the fact that we've made it through practice, and now we are going to be launching season 2 with our next episode.
Oh, and now everything's going to be perfect all the time.
Well, it's not perfect. It's not perfect practice that makes perfect. It's practice that iterates, and you make small improvements over time. So it's the 100 iterations, not the 100 times of doing something exactly the same, because if you're doing it exactly the same, you're not improving.
Yeah, the compounding of aggregate gains, 1% better, British cycling team. Let's go.
Let's touch on that. I think we touched on that early in the season.
Oh my gosh. The British cycling team was the laughing stock of cycling for 100 years. Never, like, one Tour de France victory in like 100 years. And then they hired this dude, and then he came in and just started obsessing about little tiny things. The whole mantra became like, we're going to get 1% better. So what do? They actually started washing their hands differently so that there was less likelihood they would get sick. They experimented with different sunscreens. They experimented with different hydration. They experimented with different chain lubes. They experimented with different, like cleaning systems for just all these little tiny gains all over the place started stacking, and then bam, they started becoming dominant. They won like 4 Tour de France's in 7 years, and they took all the podiums at the Olympics, and it was massive, right? So it's the accumulation, the aggregation of marginal gains that has a massive compounding effect.
I think to add to that, one thing that you touched on but you skipped over was they made the decision. They made the decision to get better, and they didn't say we need to scrap our bikes and start over from scratch. It was these incremental improvements over time, but they came together as a team, and they had the vision that they were going to achieve at a higher level, and they had the belief that they could, and they surrounded themselves with people that we're going to support them in achieving their vision.
Absolutely. There's a sense that there's a component of identity to that. We become intolerant of the current level of our living when we see ourselves differently. I'm just finishing a second reading of The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey, and he says both things are true. When we shift our paradigm, the way we see the world, our behavior changes, but also as we behave and speak differently, the way we see the world changes. And I think the people that start achieving uncommon results in life, they raise their floor and they both start seeing and behaving and speaking differently because they have a new identity and the old identity is intolerable.
Let's talk a little bit about how to apply what you just talked about to business. You've been able to, over the last few months, look under the hood of ONYX, what we're doing, what our coaching program looks like, and this podcast is a reflection of that. We share a little bit here. We're going to be more intentional about sharing some of our secret sauce in this podcast in season 2, but we talk about who this podcast is for, who the ONYX system is for. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a beautiful analogy. 10 years ago, I joined something called Entrepreneur Organization Accelerator Group. They have chapters throughout the world, actually. And the idea of this little group is that if your business is under $1 million in revenue but over 250, you can come together and do monthly accountability meetings. And at the time, it was the best vehicle or the best group setting accountability system setting for myself to help accelerate my learning and growth and accountability. And one month we sat there with our mentor, and he has a larger, more successful business, and he's listening to different struggles that we had, me and the 5 other guys in the group. And then he took out his whiteboard and he drew a jagged edge of a cliff, like straight up and down, kind of jagged, and then drew a stick figure on the side of this cliff. And he's like, this is you guys right now. You're like hanging on to the side of the cliff right here. And you think, you think that as your business grows, like how hard it is now, you're timesing that by 2, and you think when I'm twice the size I am, it's going to be twice as hard. And it's absolutely overwhelming. He's like, what you don't realize, because you can't see it yet, is above you. And he kept drawing this line of this cliff face. And then it started like actually getting less steep. And then eventually became a little more gradual. And then it almost leveled off at a certain point. He's like, actually, once you achieve the right kind of growth, things actually start becoming easier. And at that moment, like, I wanted to like shout for joy. I was like, what are you, like, here's a guy that's actually where I want to be, and he tells me I can get there and it's going to be easier. I was like so excited. And so the reason I think of that is because this ONYX program, the championship formula, essentially removes you from growth multiplying chaos, and it puts you on a path of growth while minimizing chaos at the same time. And there's nothing more beautiful in business than that.
So we'll touch on the championship formula here in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about who that's for. You touched on the fact that this guy has been where you want to be, and we did some research when we went through and we did some analysis of our current client base. So one of the interesting things as we were going through our audit, as you were looking at some of the data that we had, we discovered, and we knew this, but we kind of dug into it, that 50% of the people that are in our ONYX program have more than 1,000 doors. Now that means the other 50% have under 1,000 doors, but it speaks to this where you had to have a certain level of success to be in that room that you were in, and yet those people were still looking for improvement. And it's the same thing with the people in our program, where even though they have 1,000 doors, when they come to us, they've built a level of success. They have a team, they have revenue, but they're still bottlenecked. They're still stuck in the business. And that's where we start talking about the fact that we're in the entrepreneur extraction business. And our job, our role, when they bring us on, is to extract them from the business they built that now owns them. and to help them build a life that complements and supports their personal life versus one that competes with it.
In my experience, Tony, business growth has never been linear. We rise to this point, and then we kind of hit a plateau usually. And then we don't just necessarily go from one plateau up to another plateau. Usually, in my experience, and I know I've talked to other entrepreneurs and it's like this for them, from this plateau, we have to get through kind of a little valley of death. And then if we do that successfully, we get to the next successive higher plateau, not easily accomplished. And so what's really predictable for me is, so far in my journey, and I expect this to continue, is these successive plateaus where a breakthrough is needed, and often there's some pain and sometimes some retraction and some rebuilding that happens before I can get to that next higher level. The beautiful thing about it is the principles of breaking through those plateaus are consistent and they scale. So even though the nature of the rebuilding is slightly different for me when I'm at 1,000 doors, I can revisit the same principles, the same guideposts, the same underlying laws that helped me break through when I was stuck at 500 doors.
Absolutely, and I want to touch on the valley of death that you mentioned here a little bit. And I know we talk about the Grand Canyon quite a bit on our show here, because we took a group of property management entrepreneurs and we led them through from the North Rim down into the bottom of the Grand Canyon, across the Colorado River, and then up the ascension out of the Grand Canyon on the South Rim. And we took people of all different categories or levels, both in their business and in their fitness, and we were the same guides throughout that process. And it was easier for everybody that went with us because they did have us as guides to help them along the way. And the way I look at it is, with our ONYX program, we're doing the same thing. You can be at 1,000 doors, you can be at 300 doors, and we're guiding you through that same process, and we're helping you get there. And as a matter of fact, the people who are under that 1,000 doors, if they start with our program and start taking advantage of it when they're smaller, they have less rebuilding, less breaking down to reconstruct, because they're getting a guide or somebody that can take them through that valley of death sooner in the process. Totally. Before it's all built around them. So I think the people that are listening to this podcast and the people that are interested in our program, we'll talk a little bit about that, are people who just want more freedom. They've built a good life, they've built a good business, but they feel a little bit overwhelmed. They feel like they are capable of more, and they have a bigger purpose in life. They may be burnt out. They may not be able to see how to get to the next step, but they want that freedom and they want that purpose. They want that bigger life, and they're just looking for a way to be able to accomplish that.
As we grow our businesses, we should be moving up Maslow's hierarchy of needs toward those higher levels of being, where we're getting close to self-actualization. And Dan Sullivan talks about the 4 freedoms entrepreneurs are going for: is freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of purpose, and freedom of relationship. Some of the most beautiful, gratifying payoffs for me have been that I can keep hiring amazing people that I really enjoy trading the best hours of my days and the best days of my life with, doing something meaningful. And the meaningful, purposeful work that we do is really, at the end of the day, from my perspective, an expression of love. I think when we use our God-given time, gifts, and talents in the service of other people, that's just love. And we've been able to organize that loving into a business and to do as much of that as we possibly can. I think it's a beautiful pursuit. It's so gratifying. It's so worthy of our time and effort.
So let's talk about how we have put together a program that we have walked people through to accomplish some of those things, same things that you just mentioned. So we talk about the championship formula, And there are really 7 core components that every property management company needs. And again, in season 2, we're going to walk you through each one of these components. We're kind of introducing this to the people who have not been exposed to our program in the past. We're introducing what the overall framework looks like. But I just want to go through those for people who are listening to see what it looks like to create a business that can operate without you being in the day-to-day, without you being in the weeds. So we generally start off with our game plan. And so out of the 7 components, that's the first one. That's where we get really clear on who's our target client, what are our company goals, what are our personal goals that we want the company to help us fulfill, and then what are our income and revenue streams. And I've been teaching income and revenue streams since about 2015. I've got a presentation that's old on the internet. I don't even have a beard. I'm wearing a 3-piece suit, so that tells you how much my personality has changed since then. But we do that, and I walk you through. We have 100 different fees or levels of service that we can provide. Now, of course, you can't introduce all 100 of those in your property management business, but it's like a menu. It's like going to the Cheesecake Factory. The menu's huge, and you pick what you want to be able to roll out to help you create a profitable business. And once we've increased your profit by, and I'm not a Femax guy, I don't think it makes sense for your business to squeeze a nickel out of somebody just because you can, but I do believe in maximizing the value we deliver to the people we serve and then being appropriately compensated for that value. And so we walk you through those 100 fees along with the legal information, some sample legal information to put in your agreements, the 3 objections, and then 3 objection handlers for each objection. So that's kind of a comprehensive piece for that.
And one of the most powerful breakthroughs early on in your championship formula is addressing this revenue piece. In order for us to really have the fuel, the cash, to help build something meaningful and accelerate our growth, we've got to get our revenue per unit above $275. It's $75 a month. And that doesn't just mean that we're going to start taking that money wherever we can get it. To your point, we're going to intentionally get really serious about what our best clients want, what they're willing to pay for, offer those things to them better than anybody else, or according to our own unique ability, which Dan Sullivan would say is what we should do, and then drive that value, be rewarded for it, feel worthy of it, and as that cash comes in, it starts fueling the rest of the growth. So it's a very important first piece.
Yeah, and you touch on something that I want to make sure we make that connection. We're identifying, we call it the target client profile, not the ideal client. For me, it's very intentional. It's the targets, the center of the bullseye. And those are the people that we design our messaging, our marketing, but also our systems. I use the example, if I threw 2 kinds of parties and I invited you to my party, and I throw formal black tie parties, and then I throw some pool parties with some brews and barbecues in the backyard, you're excited to come to one of my parties. If you show up, I told you that I have this formal party, and you show up in black tie, and it just happens to be that we're having the pool party. No matter what I told you before you come through the system, before you come through our front doors, you're not going to stick around long, because you're going to say, this is not what I expected once I come through the front door. And so vice versa, if you show up in instead of formal attire, you show up in your bathing suit and you walk through and everybody else is in formal gowns and in tuxedos, you're not going to stick around. So what we do is we identify what your target client is, and then what do they value? And there are a lot of things in property management where we provide value and that our clients never know. So what we do is, with a lot of the things that we are already doing, we'll cut that off and slap a label on it. And now they're willing to pay for it, because it's not only the additional value, but it's the additional perceived value that people will pay for.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that $275 per door. We kind of look at that as a floor. Like that's kind of the minimum we think we can get you to, that we expect. But we have people in our program that exceed that. They're well into the 400s. And so it's not that we're trying to get everybody to have the same model. What we do is we introduce what's possible and then have you design the business you want where you're appropriately compensated for that value.
Yeah, so that game plan piece, again, just to recap, clear mission, vision, core values, target client profile, defined income streams, and now we're on our way to building something meaningful. And then step 2, Tony, is the rule book. Talk about that.
So a lot of times people will, you've heard kind of a buzzword in our industry the last 5-6 years is you got to automate your processes. You got to put processes in place, and that's not wrong, but it's wrong at the wrong timing. And a lot of people jump right to process, which is what we do and how we do it, when they should be focusing on the policy, which is what we do and why we do it. So we need to focus on what we do and why we do it, not necessarily the how we do it, right? The how we do it is our process. And so our rule book, think about it this way. If we both bought NFL teams, the rules of how you win the game would already be predefined. And so there's not a lot we can do. We can work within the rules, work within the boundaries, but we didn't buy NFL teams. We have property management businesses. And so what it means to win the game of property management at your company, or what it means to win and what the rules or policies that we want to follow, we've got a lot of that stuff in our head, and we help you, again, extract that out of your skull so that you can put it onto paper or put it into a digital system so that your team can follow your rules of how to play the game of property management.
Okay, I want to give people just a really quick framework for this, and let's keep the cadence going. There's so much that we could talk about. We could make this a 2 or 3 hour episode, but we want to stay light. But there's a really cool matrix that makes this rulebook formation super powerful. And what we're doing is we're looking at landlords and properties, tenants and leases, vendors and maintenance, company and team. These are 4 categories. And then we have 5 different stages that are vital. And we help you identify 2 of the stages where things most often go wrong. So those 5 stages are prospect, onboarding, active, termination, and closed. And what we found is that most of the issues lie with onboarding and termination in these in-between spaces. So this framework actually helps uncover a lot of blind spots. You might think you've already got good policies and procedures, but this one really shores it up. Okay, so that's enough of a teaser. Let's go to the playbook next.
Yeah, so what you just mentioned, we call that the ONYX Property Management Grid. We have a tool where we lay that out. It's very easy to see what phases are involved and what categories. So as you're building this out, your team can very easily know where to go to get the information that they're looking for.
The beautiful thing is it enrolls them in the process, which is super powerful. We can go into greater detail about all that. Tell us about the playbook.
Okay, so with our rule book, those are the policies. Again, what we do and why we do it. The process, those are our playbook. The plays we execute. So that is
how we do it, right?
How we do it, yep. So the interesting thing that we've learned over the years is people support what they help create. So policy belongs to the business owner. The process belongs to the people closest to the front line. We don't want to sit in a room and create our processes, and this is where most people get their process documentation wrong. They'll sit in a room and for 4 months create all of these processes, an onboarding process for a landlord, a terminating process for a tenant, and they'll go through these processes and then they'll roll them out to their team. What's even worse is if they build it out into a system like Aptly or a system like Lead Simple without involving the team and starting with policy first. So if we go to our team and say, what are we currently doing or what should we be doing to adhere to or uphold these policies? And then we ask our frontline people to participate. So there's 2 things, there are 2 reasons why we want to do that. Number 1, I already mentioned, people support what they help create. Number 2 is that when we have somebody help us do that documentation, it takes that workload off our plate. And if you've been listening to this podcast at all this year, you've heard me drive home the theme that there's $10 an hour activity, $100 an hour activity, and $1,000 an hour activity. And for you to sit down and document the individual steps that your people should be taking is $10 an hour activity. You should not be doing that as the business owner. They should be documenting that and saying this is what we are currently doing or what we should be doing to adhere to or uphold those policies. And then, of course, you get veto power and you can reorder things. But if they contribute, they're going to support it. And it's going to be way more successful.
Okay, let's keep going and stay light and keep the momentum. Positions, roles, and response. Positions are important. This is the next major component of the championship formula. We talked about policies and procedures, talked about processes. That was the playbook.
Yep.
Now we have positions. What are positions, Tony?
So our positions are just the roles and responsibilities. Who's doing what? And it's amazing as I start to dig into these companies to see how gray things are. Sometimes this person does it, sometimes that person does it, and there's no set accountability standards. And if you have no accountability chart, which we dig into, and we have an accountability chart of who's doing what now and then who should be doing it in the future, because we help you transition into a better structure. Sometimes that involves going from a portfolio structure to departmental, or departmental to a pod-based structure. So we look at all that, but we help you get really clear on what role is responsible for what activity, not what person, but what role. Because think about this. If we were, go back to the NFL, if we were creating a championship team that we expected to win the Super Bowl, we wouldn't look around at the people that were available and say, well, that guy's pretty good at hopping and he can also throw, but he can also block. So let's build a position around that guy. What you do is you say, what positions do we need on the team to win? And then let's make sure that we have the right processes assigned to the right position.
There's absolutely a lot of blocking and tackling that happens in the front lines of property management. These roles are fairly static. They don't require a lot of creativity, but you need to know exactly who does what, and it needs to be clearly defined. You leak a lot of energy and a lot of manpower and resource costs when it's not clearly defined and people don't know what they're supposed to be doing. I had an economics professor at the MBA school who said this probably 50 times. He said, when nobody owns it, nobody takes care of it. When everyone owns it, nobody takes care of it. When someone owns it, they take care of it. Yep. And that leads us to the players. Tell us about the players, Tony.
Yeah, so a lot of times we'll come in and I'll say, well, why are you doing inspections that way? And they'll say, well, Joe's not really good with technology, so it's easier if we just give him a clipboard and a checklist and he goes in and does his move out inspections that way. And so what I hear is people are defining their positions based on the players they already have on the team. That's totally the wrong way to go. We've already talked about what positions do we need to be able to uphold the policies we have, to execute the processes that we have. What positions do we need on the team? And then how do we go out and recruit, train, and retain the championship level player to fill those positions? So it's just really getting clear on, and it's not immediately, we don't, if we have somebody that's in the wrong position, we look at, do we move them to another position or do we help them transition to another team? But we create a plan for that to help make sure that we have all the right players that have all the right skills to execute in the positions that we put them in.
Very good. Very, very good. Equipment is next.
Okay, so if we're going to do all of this, or if we're going to put people on the field, we want to make sure we've properly equipped them for battle. So our equipment that we go through is our tools, technology, training, and resources. So we make sure that now that we've defined the team we need, we look at all of the equipment that you have. So are you properly training the people? What's our training cadence? What is our meeting structure? I know a lot of people in the property management space have heard about EOS, and we run an EOS-like system. It's not pure EOS, because I think EOS for some smaller businesses is a little bit overkill. But we look at how do we run our system? How do we execute the things we need to execute? What tools do we give them? What technology do we implement? And then not only do we look at what should we add, but almost more importantly, what do we need to take away? A lot of times as property management companies, we start grabbing all of these different shiny objects and have our team do a little bit in this software, a little bit in this software. And I heard the difference one time between American art and European art. And in American art, we start with a blank canvas and we throw stuff at it until it looks like art. And in European art, they start with a block of marble and they carve away everything that's not art. And I just love that. I love the vision of going into companies and helping them carve away everything that's not art.
So beautiful. Okay, we're getting through these 7 different components, but I just want to pause really quick and just identify this idea that there's a sequence to these, Tony. We started with the game plan. These are the high-level goals, the core values, the mission, the vision, the target client, the income streams. It's like that was a foundational layer, right? And then we got the rule book, which policies come before processes, right? So then the processes are the playbook. And now that we know who we are, what drives our thinking, and how we do things, then we attach that accountability piece, those positions. And then beyond the positions are the individual players that need to be in the positions. So this whole thing stacks on top of each other. Right. And you wouldn't put equipment before you put vision and outcome, right? You have to start in these orders. This has a beautiful cadence to it.
Now, to be fair, most companies are already up and running, and so they have some of this in place. So what we'll do is we look at what you already have in place, and then we look at where to circle back and correct that. So you can start in any one of these, but we eventually take you back up to game plan and circle back around and continue to make your success cycle smaller and smaller and smaller and tighter till we're carving off 2% improvement, and that makes a drastic difference in the company.
And how do we do that if we don't measure the right things, Tony, right?
Well, that's what I always say. So our last component, our 7th core component of the championship formula, is the scoreboard. If we're going to do all this work, if we're going to put the right people in the right positions and give them the right equipment and put them on the field, we need to know, are we winning or losing? Are we winning at the game of property management or not? And most people do not know if they're winning or losing. And so what we have with our, what gets measured gets managed.
Peter Drucker.
Peter Drucker. So this is where we do that in our scoreboard. So our scoreboard is our KPIs, which is our key performance indicators, our OKRs, our objectives and key results, and then our financial metrics. So we help you look at all of your financial metrics. We help you look at all of your KPIs. And I got to be honest with you, I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen a lot of people teaching KPIs, and most of them teach it wrong, and most then are doing it wrong. So we don't need to get into it now, but there's 2 types of KPIs that we will help you build out. And that is our trending KPIs, or our company stats, and then our actionable KPIs. What actions do we need to take to make sure that we have a positive impact on our trending KPIs?
Beautiful. Okay, I want to point something out. You have made a decision to give all this stuff away for free. You're going to start creating content on all of this stuff, which to some people could sound counterintuitive. Like, you have a high value system program that effectively moves people off these chaotic plateaus through these transitions and then onto greater growth, extracting the entrepreneur from that chaos and building more freedom. Why would you give this away for free? And what's behind this thinking?
Well, 2 things. I think there are people that are naturally interested in what we have to offer, but they've not hit the growth level or the growth potential to be able to engage with us. Or they're just a smaller size, and if we can get them this information ahead of time before they grow to the point where they have this business that is essentially surrounding them and suffocating them, we can help save them. So on one hand, we want to give them the information to be able to build a business on their own. But on the other hand, one of the things that I've noticed, and I know you know this too, I have a running coach, and I've been running since 2014. I know how to run. I know how to put one foot in front of the other. It's the accountability, it's the camaraderie, and it's somebody that can help me tweak It's finding the little bit of information that's going to help me during my implementation. So we want to share what's possible. And then what we've discovered is that information is cheap. Implementation and proximity is what people pay for.
I want to add a quick story to this. Back Thanksgiving, a few months ago, 5 months ago, I said, I'm going to start running again. I'm going to go for a 100-mile race. I'm not as cool as Tony Klein. He's run 100-mile races, 200-mile races. Most I've ever done is 100K. That's a baby race compared to Tony Klein. I wasn't thinking about Tony Klein, but I'm like, I want to do a 100-mile race in 2026. I told my coach, let's go. He started ramping up my mileage, and then boom, knee pain hits me. And he's like, well, here's the exercises to do. Get some bands, do these exercises. Here's the YouTube links. I didn't do them. Like, I wanted this goal so bad, I didn't do them. So then I found a local guy right by my office that does strength training, and I go there twice a week for an hour, and he stands over me and he tells me what to do for an hour. Guess what? I am doing it. I am doing it. It's the implementation that makes all the difference. There are vast stores of knowledge available to anyone on YouTube about almost anything now. But it's the curation of it and distilled in the right form, and then it's the people that have been there and done that will link arms with you and do it with you that makes the biggest difference from my experience in actually making something shift and actually implementing something.
Absolutely. You know, I love NARPM, and I don't know how many members there are now, 4,000 or 6,000, something like that. And so if you want to just kind of go and rub elbows and share surface level war stories, NARPM is a great place to do that. And I've got a lot of value out of it, so I'm not knocking it. But I kind of equate being in an environment like that as being in the stadium, right? And what we want to do is we want to give people an opportunity to move from being in the stadium to being in the locker room at halftime and saying, look, we've done this, we've had some success here, we've been kicked in the teeth for part of the second quarter, and now we're going to come together collectively as a high-performing championship team, the people in our program, and we're going to go out and we're going to win the second half. And I think that's a big difference from sitting in the stands and cheering on what's possible and being on the field and actually making things possible and helping each other achieve at a really high level. Now, you can't do that with 500 people. You can't put 500 people in a locker room. So this is a small scale community, and we keep it that way intentionally so that we can drive high value and really, really solid results.
I have a thought that, for at least for me, really sums up a lot of this, what we're talking about. And it's usually not the problem that's the problem. It's the way we're thinking about the problem that's the problem. And in order for me to shift my thinking, it's been the most powerful effect on a shift in my thinking has come from spending time with smart people that share my values, that think differently than I do, that share a common goal with me. It's kind of like, I'm going to get a little religious here. It's kind of like when I go to the Bible and I read it's not just the words on the page, it's the act of reading the Bible that like opens me to like moving to a higher plane. Similarly, when we put ourselves in the right rooms with the right people, we're opening ourselves to almost by osmosis raise our vibration level to these higher planes where the goals that we know we want, they just exist on those higher planes. So it's a transformation of ourselves. It's becoming a leader. It's achieving closer to our highest potential that is the benefit of this type of implementation of a program. It's not just the knowledge itself. This is not a how-to program. This is a change program. It's a breakthrough. And for me, it's when I become a different person, everything around me changes. I'm usually the bottleneck, which is a really empowering thought. And so that's the power of something like the ONYX program, is that we shift and we change as a person.
Yeah, 100%. I want to wrap up with three things. So we are going to be putting on a webinar here, and we'll share the dates for that. We're going to put on a webinar where we talk all about this, where people can actually come on to the call and ask questions about it. And so it's actually going to be put out there as a large-scale meeting. So you're going to be able to be on camera or off camera, whichever you prefer, but actually come in and ask questions about this. So we've got that coming up in a couple of weeks. And then we have our retreat in June 22nd through 26th. We're going to go over everything that we just talked about, and it's limited to 13 attendees. And we're bringing in 8 high-level speakers. So we're going to have people from the industry that will be there. I'm not going to take the time to list them out here now. Maybe we will in future episodes. But if you're interested in being around people that we just talked about in a situation where we're going to go through the championship formula and help you build that out in a real, intentional, intimate setting in the mountains of Keystone, Colorado, we're going to be doing a very short hike on one of the days to go up over the Continental Divide. I don't know if many of you know about the Continental Divide or spend much time up there, but it's pretty close to my house, so I love it. It's a great place to be, beautiful views, and so if you want more information about that, go to pmsuccess.com/retreat, and you'll be able to see the pictures of where we're staying. We're staying in luxury estates. We have a private chef coming in. Mark, I know you were there at the last time.
It was amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. Food was to die for. I mean, absolutely some of the best food I've ever had. And we had it day after day, meal after meal, combined with all of this fantastic content.
Total luxury, feasting of the mind, body, and spirit. It's so good.
It was really good. I'm so looking forward to getting back out there because it was a magical time, not just for us, but for all of the attendees. Everybody had great things to say. If you want to hear what some of the people said, as a matter of fact, if you go to that pmsuccess.com/retreat, there are some testimonials from some of the attendees there.
Check it out for sure.
Yeah. The last thing I want to do is wrap up with just celebrating Mark Brower and being excited that he has joined the ONYX team. He brings years and years and years of wisdom and trial and error. One of the things I love about Mark is he's not afraid to jump in and try something new and learn and iterate and come out better on the other side. And so we're bringing all of that experience and plugging that into the ONYX framework, and really excited to have you a part of the team.
Thank you, Tony. I'm honored to be part of the team. I love being around like-minded, good people, changing and transforming together. I'm super excited about it.
Perfect. All right, well, let's get you the last word and get them out of here, and then we will start planning for season 2.
Last word of the day is drink more liquid death. It's good for you. Hashtag not sponsored.
Not sponsored. Thanks for sticking around to the end. We look forward to seeing you in season 2 of the Property Management Success Podcast.
See you soon.